The late afternoon sun glazed the neighborhood in warm gold, painting the trimmed lawns and pastel houses in a glow that made everything look just a bit too perfect. The air hummed with sprinklers and the faint rhythm of a lawnmower somewhere down the block. A young father carried groceries across the street, a dog barked in the distance, and on the far corner of Sycamore Lane, Daniel Whitman locked his front door. It was supposed to be a quick trip, maybe 40 minutes, tops. Just milk, some bread, and a new battery for the garage remote. He gave the lock a firm tug to make sure it was secure, patted his pocket for his keys, and walked to his pickup parked in the driveway. His security camera blinked red above the door, the kind of small, silent witness you forget about until it matters. Daniel had lived here for 2 years. His property sat just outside the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association, close enough to get their newsletters stuffed in his mailbox by mistake, but far enough that he never paid their dues or followed their rules. He liked it that way. Freedom, he always told his brother. No one telling me what color my fence has to be. As he pulled out of the driveway, a white SUV with the HOA logo on its door cruised slowly down the street. He barely noticed it. The driver, wearing a blue shirt embroidered with the Oak Ridge crest, rolled down his window and watched Daniel's truck disappear around the bend. He turned to the passenger beside him. "This is the house," the driver murmured. The passenger, a heavy-set man with a clipboard, squinted at a printed map. "Says here, inspection scheduled for today. Code 23B. Violation, unauthorized structure, backyard shed," the driver added, flipping through a stack of forms. "Doesn't matter," the passenger said. "Board wants photo proof before the deadline. Let's get it done before he comes back." They parked 2 houses down, out of sight. The camera above Daniel's porch captured every detail. The 2 men stepping out of the SUV, glancing around, the way one of them adjusted his polo collar nervously before approaching the door. He knocked once, twice. No answer. "Lock inspection." "Should have access," the taller man said. He reached into a small pouch on his belt and pulled out a set of universal keys. Master keys meant for emergency HOA maintenance, not personal homes. He tried one. The lock clicked softly. The door opened. Inside, the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. The men walked in, scanning the living room. The clipboard man muttered under his breath, taking photos with his phone, of the windows, the thermostat, even the family portraits on the wall. "Need evidence," he said, as if the photos would justify their trespass. The other man went down the hallway, opening doors. Bedroom, bathroom, guest room. He scribbled something in his notes. The camera outside caught a faint reflection of one man's figure moving past the blinds. For anyone watching, it would have looked wrong. Strangers walking through someone's home like they owned it. A few doors down, a neighbor, Mrs. Kelly, noticed the SUV parked oddly and the open front door. She frowned, watching from behind her curtains. "Daniel's not home," she whispered to herself. "What are they doing in there?" She considered calling him, but the men wore uniforms. Maybe it was official business. Maybe she was overreacting. Back inside, one of the men opened the garage door, shining a flashlight across the shelves stacked with tools and paint cans. "Unauthorized workspace," he said. "Could be commercial use. Write that down." They exited 15 minutes later, locking the door again. They didn't know the lock was slightly damaged now, a barely visible scratch around the keyhole. They climbed back into the SUV, jotting final notes. "Done," the passenger said. "Board'll have what it needs." The SUV drove off, tires crunching over the gravel shoulder. The porch camera blinked red again, time-stamped 4:17 p.m. When the neighborhood fell silent once more, the golden light began to fade. The only sign of intrusion was a faintly shifted doormat, a door not quite closed tight, and the security light flickering to life as dusk crept in. Somewhere out of sight, the SUV disappeared past the subdivision gates, its logo reflecting briefly in the rearview mirror, Oak Ridge HOA Enforcement Division. The calm returned. But the peace was gone. The house was quiet when the 2 HOA staff stepped inside, too quiet. The taller one, a man named Rick, shut the door behind them and exhaled, rubbing his hands together like someone about to perform a job they knew they shouldn't. 15 minutes, he muttered. "Just get the photos, mark it, and go." His partner, a heavier older man named Dennis, nodded and lifted his phone, the camera flash slicing across the dim hallway. The beam landed on a framed family picture, Daniel and his younger brother fishing at a lake, and Dennis hesitated, lowering the phone for a second. "You sure this is the right property?" he asked. Rick pointed to the clipboard. "Address matches. 914, Sycamore Lane. Unapproved shed in the backyard." The board said no exceptions. He didn't mention that the actual HOA map ended 3 houses before this one. They split up. Dennis moved into the living room, brushing past the couch and coffee table like he belonged there. Every click of his camera echoed too loud in the still air. He photographed the windowsills, the ceiling fan, the paint color. "Neutral gray, not HOA-approved palette," he whispered, jotting it down. Rick opened the sliding door to the backyard, stepping onto the patio where Daniel's small wooden shed stood beneath a maple tree. He took several photos from different angles, then crouched to look at the foundation. "Yeah, unregistered build," he said into his recorder. The irony was that Daniel's shed predated most of the Oak Ridge development, built by the property's original owner decades before the HOA even existed. Inside, Dennis found himself wandering through the hallway, curiosity overtaking professionalism. He peeked into the bedroom. The bed was neatly made. A pair of boots sat by the dresser. He noticed a box of family keepsakes half open on the floor, old medals, a folded flag, a black and white photo of a soldier in uniform. He paused again. "Rick, I don't think this is right," he said quietly. "Something feels off." Rick didn't answer. He was outside, halfway through dictating measurements into his phone. Dennis sighed, put the lid back on the box, and returned to the living room, where the glow from the porch camera blinked faintly through the window, catching his every move. When Rick re-entered, he looked impatient. "We're done," he said. "Let's go." But Dennis's conscience gnawed at him. "Man, if this isn't one of ours." "It is," Rick snapped. "You think I like this job? Orders are orders. The board's been after this guy for months. Claims he ignored letters." He didn't realize Daniel had never received a single one, because he wasn't on their mailing list. The 2 men walked back toward the front door, Rick stuffing papers into his clipboard. In his haste, he left one behind, a form titled Inspection Order. Lot 102. Daniel's home, by every county record, was Lot 103. They stepped out, locked the door, and hurried down the driveway, their footsteps crunching on the gravel. As they reached the SUV, Dennis cast one last glance over his shoulder. The house looked normal again, door closed, blinds drawn, no sign of life. But something about the quiet unnerved him. "We shouldn't have gone in," he said under his breath. Rick started the engine. "Forget it. It's done." The vehicle rolled away, leaving behind the faint scent of engine oil and a camera light blinking steadily in the dusk, recording, watching, preserving the truth. Inside the house, the air still carried the warmth of sunlight through the windows. The refrigerator hummed, the curtains swayed slightly, and the faint echo of their footsteps lingered in the hallway like a memory burned into the walls. Nothing looked out of place, but everything was, and 40 minutes later, when Daniel's truck turned the corner and his headlights swept across the familiar shape of his home, that invisible disturbance waited, silent and heavy, like a breath held too long. The sun had dipped behind the roofs by the time Daniel's truck rumbled back onto Sycamore Lane. He hummed along to the radio, one hand on the wheel, groceries shifting on the passenger seat. Everything felt normal, until he noticed the porch light glowing faintly, even though he hadn't left it on. His brow furrowed. The closer he got, the stranger it felt. The front door wasn't closed all the way. It hung slightly ajar, swaying as the wind brushed against it. The air seemed thicker suddenly, heavy with something unspoken. He pulled into the driveway, cut the engine, and just stared for a beat, his heart starting to pound in his chest. Then he grabbed his phone, slipped his keys between his fingers like a weapon, and walked slowly toward the house. He pushed the door open with his shoulder. "Hello," he called out. No answer, only the creak of the floor under his boots. The living room lights were on. The couch cushions were slightly shifted, his coffee table drawer halfway open. He froze. For a second, his brain refused to accept what he was seeing. He'd locked that door. He always locked that door. He set the groceries down quietly and moved through the hallway, muscles tightening with each step. Then he heard it, a faint voice coming from upstairs. 2 of them. Men's voices. Calm, casual, as if they belonged there. Adrenaline surged through him. "Hey!" he barked, his voice echoing up the stairs. The talking stopped. Footsteps shuffled. Then two men appeared at the top landing, polo shirts with the Oakridge HOA crest on their chests, clipboards in hand, startled expressions frozen mid-step. "Sir," the taller one began, raising a hand, "we're with the Oakridge Homeowners Association. What the hell are you doing in my house?" Daniel shouted. His voice cracked with disbelief. "You broke in." The older man tried to explain, "We're conducting an inspection under HOA code." "Inspection?" Daniel's laugh was sharp and furious. "I'm not even in your damn HO." The taller one, Rick, stammered. "Sir, we were told this property was part of Oakridge jurisdiction. There was a notice." "Notice?" Daniel snapped, stepping closer, eyes blazing. "You broke into my home without a warrant, without permission, and you're telling me you thought it was in your jurisdiction?" His voice boomed through the hall. He could feel his pulse in his temples. "Do you even realize what you've done? This is trespassing. This is a felony." Rick glanced at Dennis, who looked pale and shaken. "Sir, please calm down. Calm down." Daniel pointed toward the door. "You can explain that to the police. Get out." His voice dropped low now, cold, dangerous. "Right now." They hesitated, glancing at each other like two kids caught stealing. Rick started to mumble something about inspection protocols, but Daniel had already pulled out his phone. "You see that camera out front?" he said, tapping the screen. "It recorded everything. You unlocking my door, walking through my rooms, taking pictures of my things." He stepped closer until they were almost face to face. "You want to talk about violations? You just broke the law." The words landed like stones. Dennis swallowed hard, the clipboard trembling slightly in his hand. "Look, we didn't mean—" "You did mean to," Daniel cut in. "You meant to scare someone into compliance. You meant to flex authority you don't even have here." He jabbed a finger toward the door. "Out." The men shuffled past him, avoiding eye contact. When they reached the porch, Daniel followed, still recording on his phone. "Names," he demanded. "I want your names." Rick muttered them, barely audible. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," Daniel said, voice shaking with rage. "You don't set foot on this property again unless it's with a warrant in your hand." The SUV sat at the curb, engine still running. They hurried toward it, slamming the doors behind them. As they pulled away, Daniel stood in the driveway, chest heaving, watching the taillights fade into the distance. The neighborhood was quiet again, too quiet, and the weight of what had just happened sank in like cold water. He turned back to his house. The door was still open, light spilling onto the porch. He stepped inside, scanning the rooms. Everything looked the same, yet everything felt different. His home, once safe and private, now felt invaded, tainted. He sat down slowly on the couch, rubbing his face with both hands. The grocery bag still sat where he'd dropped it, milk sweating onto the floor. His mind replayed every second, the shock, the uniforms, the arrogance. Then, through the fog of anger, a single thought crystallized. Asterisk, they said inspection. They had keys. They thought they had power. Asterisk, he reached for his phone again and opened his security app. The red blinking dot on the porch camera promised him the one thing he needed most now, proof. Night came heavy and silent over Sycamore Lane. The kind of silence that pressed against the windows, amplifying every sound inside. Daniel sat in the dim glow of his living room, laptop open, eyes fixed on the screen. The security feed loaded slowly, blue progress bar creeping across the timeline, and then there it was, his porch, 3:32 p.m. Two men stepping into frame, one checking his phone, the other carrying a clipboard. Daniel leaned forward, his pulse quickening. He dragged the timeline. 3:35, the key turning in the lock. 3:36, both men entering his house. He froze the frame, staring at the image, jaw tightening. "Got you," he whispered. He replayed the footage 3 times, studying every movement. The camera had captured their license plate, their uniforms, the HOA logo gleaming under the sun. Every few seconds, the angle caught the nervous glance of the shorter man, Dennis, as if even he knew it was wrong. The longer he watched, the more Daniel's anger transformed into a sharp, cold clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. They entered with tools, took photos, left paperwork. He opened a notepad and began listing timestamps. *3:33 entry. 3:38 interior movement. 3:47 exit. Every detail mattered. When he finished, he copied the entire video file onto a flash drive, labeling it in capital letters, "Illegal entry, HOA staff." By midnight, he was on the phone with his friend Sam, a local attorney. "They what?" Sam's voice sharpened instantly. Daniel explained everything: the broken lock, the uniforms, the footage. "You're sure you're not under that HOA's jurisdiction?" "Positive," Daniel said. "I checked when I bought this place. Their boundary ends at lot 102. I'm 103. Sam exhaled slowly. "Then this isn't just trespassing. It's criminal entry. They had no right to be there." Daniel heard typing on the other end. "Listen, don't post the footage online yet. File a report first. We'll let the police handle it, then the media if we have to." Daniel looked at the frozen frame of the two men inside his hallway, strangers in his sanctuary, and felt his hands tremble. "They walked through my home, Sam. Through my bedroom." "I know," Sam said softly. "We'll make them answer for it." The next morning, a patrol car rolled up to Daniel's driveway. Officer Reyes, calm but focused, stepped out with a small notebook. Daniel walked him through everything: the broken lock, the inspection sheet left behind, the footage. Reyes watched the clip on Daniel's laptop, his expression tightening. "That's a very clear," he said. "They had keys." Daniel nodded. "Said they were conducting an inspection." Reyes wrote something down. "You said you're not part of Oak Ridge HOA? Not a member, not a payer, not even listed in their covenants." Reyes sighed. "All right. That means they had no authority at all. I'll file this as unlawful entry and property violation. You did the right thing saving that footage." As he left, Daniel noticed the subtle change in his tone, from polite curiosity to quiet disbelief. Even the officer couldn't believe how brazen it was. By noon, word had spread. A neighbor, Mrs. Kelly, dropped by, wringing her hands. "I saw them that day," she confessed. "Thought it was odd, but they looked official." Her testimony, combined with the footage, made the case airtight. That afternoon, a police cruiser stopped by the Oak Ridge HOA office, a bland beige building at the end of Willow Street. A crowd of residents gathered, murmuring as officers carried out boxes of files. The HOA president, a stout man in a gray suit, stood by the door, insisting it was a clerical misunderstanding. But when reporters arrived, holding up screenshots from Daniel's video, his voice cracked. Cameras flashed, microphones crowded, and the perfect image of Oak Ridge order began to crumble. That evening, Daniel watched the news from his couch. His own porch footage filled the screen: blurred faces, timestamps, official commentary. The caption read, "HOA Trespassing investigation underway. Local homeowner not affiliated." He didn't smile, not yet. Justice, he knew, moved slowly. But seeing those two men's actions broadcast publicly, seeing the truth unspool in front of the entire community, brought a quiet kind of satisfaction. He muted the TV and glanced at his laptop. The video file was still there, saved and secure. Outside, the night hummed softly again, the way it used to, but Daniel didn't feel the same peace. The illusion of safety had been stripped away. "Still," he whispered to himself, "let them come for me again. This time, the cameras are watching." The following weeks unfolded like the slow turning of a heavy wheel, deliberate, unstoppable. The Oak Ridge scandal had become the talk of the entire county. News vans parked outside the HOA office. Headlines splashed across local channels: "HOA trespasses into non-member home, investigation expands." The footage Daniel had turned over now lived on every platform, clipped and shared by outraged homeowners everywhere. Comment sections exploded with stories from other residents, tales of intimidation, wrongful fines, and invasions of privacy that suddenly found a new voice through his. What began as one man's violation had cracked open the glossy facade of Oak Ridge Authority. The HOA board scrambled to contain the fallout. Statements, apologies, excuses, none of it mattered. The video spoke louder than all of them. When the lawsuit officially landed, it did so with the weight of quiet precision. Daniel's attorney, Sam, handled it methodically: civil trespass, invasion of privacy, property damage, emotional distress. The police report, the footage, and witness statements formed an airtight case. A few of the board members resigned almost immediately, claiming they had no knowledge of the inspection order. The president, Mr. Halvorson, tried to shift blame to the field staff, but that only made things worse. The two employees, Rick and Dennis, both faced charges for unlawful entry. Under oath, Dennis admitted that they'd been told to make an example of homes near Oak Ridge boundaries. It was never about rules. It was about control. When that truth surfaced, Oak Ridge's reputation imploded. Daniel didn't gloat. He didn't post victory videos or grant interviews. He stayed quiet, focused, methodical, repairing his home, replacing his locks, and upgrading every camera in sight. But the house still carried echoes of the day it was breached. Some nights, he'd stand in the hallway and feel the ghost of their presence, the creak of the floorboards, the faint click of a camera shutter in his memory. Privacy was something you never truly valued until someone took it away. Yet amidst the unease, he felt something else stirring too, a sense of strength. He had stood up to a system designed to silence individuals. And he'd won. By the time the settlement arrived, spring had rolled in. The HOA, under new leadership, offered a public apology and compensation, not just for damages, but for emotional harm and defamation. The local news called it a landmark case for homeowner rights. The county even began reviewing HOA authority limits after Daniel's story went viral. Reporters reached out again, asking for comment, but he declined. Instead, he spent that evening on his porch, sipping coffee as the light faded, watching the calm return to his street. The same porch light that once flickered above the open door now glowed steady and soft. Across the way, Mrs. Kelly waved from her mailbox. For the first time in weeks, Daniel smiled, small, tired, but genuine. He walked down to his gate and hammered a new sign into the grass: private property, not HOA affiliated. The metal gleamed in the sunset, firm and defiant. He stepped back, admiring it for a moment. This wasn't about rebellion anymore. It was about reclaiming peace. Behind him, the camera on the porch blinked once, its red light steady, almost like a heartbeat. Inside, the house was quiet, not the uneasy quiet of intrusion, but the soft calm of safety restored. He exhaled slowly, letting the tension of the past weeks drift away with the wind. Then he turned off the porch light and whispered to himself, "Never again." The door clicked shut behind him, this time locked tight.